Playing boss with your tiny startup. My brother Marcus mocked at Mom's 65th birthday dinner. So cute. The entire table laughed. 17 family members, crystal glasses raised, all enjoying the joke at my expense. Dad wiped his eyes, still chuckling. At least Marcus runs a real company. What is it you do again, Morgan? Websites. I smiled politely. Something like that. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. The message from Richard Chin, Senior Acquisition Partner at Blackwell & Associates, read, "Ma'am, the $340 million takeover documents are ready. Board meeting confirmed for Monday 9 a.m. Across the table, Marcus's phone started ringing. I was 31 years old and I'd spent 23 of those years being the invisible Parker sibling. Marcus was born first. Golden from day one. The hospital photos tell the story. Mom beaming, Dad's chest puffed with pride, holding his son like a trophy. 3 years later I arrived to considerably less fanfare. A girl, Dad had reportedly said according to Aunt Patricia. Well, we'll try again. They never did try again. Why bother when Marcus was already perfect? My earliest memory of understanding my place in the family hierarchy happened when I was 6 years old. Marcus had just turned 9, and Dad bought him his first computer. A top-of-the-line machine that cost $2,400 in 1999 dollars. I remember because I'd asked for art supplies for my birthday that same year and received a $15 watercolor set from the grocery store. Marcus needs proper tools, Mom explained when I asked why his present was so much bigger. He's going to do important things someday. I painted with those grocery store watercolors until the colors ran out, then switched to drawing with pencils I found around the house. The second memory that crystallized my position came at age 11. Marcus was 14 and Dad had started bringing him to Parker Manufacturing on weekends. The company had been in our family for 3 generations. Great-grandfather Parker had started it in 1952, and it had grown into a regional manufacturing powerhouse worth $89 million at the time. I asked to come along once. Just once. Dad looked at me like I'd suggested we adopt a raccoon. The factory floor is no place for a little girl, Morgan. Why don't you help your mother with lunch? Marcus smirked at me from behind Dad's back. I helped Mom make sandwiches while Marcus learned about inventory management and supplier relationships. I learned that my brother liked his crusts cut off. The third defining memory happened when I was 16. I'd built my first website, a small online store selling handmade jewelry I crafted from supplies bought with babysitting money. I was making $200 to $300 per month, which felt like a fortune to a teenager with no allowance. I made the mistake of showing Dad. "That's nice, honey," he said, barely glancing at the screen. But Marcus just closed his first real deal at the company. $1.2 million in new contracts. That's what business looks like. Marcus was 19, freshly enrolled in the business program Dad had selected for him at State, and already being groomed to take over Parker Manufacturing. My $300 per month jewelry business might as well have been a lemonade stand. Maybe focus on finding a husband instead of playing store, Mom added, patting my shoulder. Your website thing is cute, but it's not going to pay the bills. I shut down the jewelry site that night. But I didn't stop building. Through high school, I taught myself everything I could about web development, digital marketing, and e-commerce infrastructure. While Marcus partied through college on Dad's dime, I worked 3 jobs and took night classes, graduating with dual degrees in computer science and business with a 3.94 GPA. Nobody came to my graduation. Marcus had a golf tournament that weekend, some charity event Dad insisted they couldn't miss. I moved to Portland after graduation, taking a job at a small tech startup that paid $42,000 a year. The family heard "small tech startup" and assumed I was barely scraping by. I never corrected them. What they didn't know was that within 18 months, I'd been promoted twice. Within 3 years I was head of product development. And within 5 years the startup I'd helped build, a supply chain optimization platform called Logiflow, had been acquired by a Fortune 500 company for $780 million. My shares were worth $12.3 million after taxes. But I didn't tell my family. Why would I? Every holiday, every phone call, every interaction made it clear that nothing I did would ever matter. Marcus had taken over Parker Manufacturing by then, and the family had crowned him king. Instead of buying a mansion and announcing my success, I did something else. I invested. I built. I acquired. Quietly, systematically, I created Meridian Ventures, a holding company that specialized in acquiring undervalued manufacturing and logistics companies. I hired brilliant people. I made strategic moves. And I kept my name out of the press by operating through a complex corporate structure that would take a forensic accountant weeks to untangle. By my 30th birthday, Meridian Ventures controlled $2.1 billion in assets across 14 companies. Parker Manufacturing, Marcus's crown jewel, Dad's legacy, was worth $340 million on paper. But I knew something the family didn't. The company was bleeding. Marcus had made a series of catastrophically bad decisions over the past 4 years. He'd over-leveraged to acquire 2 competing firms that turned out to be financial disasters. He'd ignored supply chain modernization, letting the infrastructure rot while he bought a 3rd vacation home. He'd alienated key suppliers and lost 3 major contracts worth $47 million annually. Parker Manufacturing wasn't thriving under Marcus's leadership. It was dying. He'd just gotten very good at hiding it from Mom and Dad. I'd been watching. Waiting. And 6 months ago, when Marcus's bankers started quietly shopping the company to potential buyers, I made my move. Through a subsidiary of a subsidiary, Meridian Ventures had been buying up Parker Manufacturing debt for pennies on the dollar. We'd acquired strategic supplier contracts. We'd positioned ourselves as the inevitable acquirer. Marcus had no idea who was circling. He just knew someone was. And in 72 hours he was going to find out. Mom's 65th birthday was supposed to be a celebration. The whole family had gathered at Belmore Country Club, the same club Dad had been a member of for 30 years, the same club that had rejected my membership application when I was 24 because I didn't meet the financial requirements. I'd driven up from Portland that morning, arriving in my usual understated fashion. No flashy car. I'd rented a modest Honda at the airport. No designer clothes. I wore a simple navy dress I'd owned for 3 years. Nothing that would attract attention or invite questions. The party was in the Wellington Room, all dark wood paneling and oil paintings of men who'd been dead for a century. 17 family members had gathered. Mom and Dad, Marcus and his wife Jennifer, Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert, 6 cousins with various spouses, and Grandmother Parker, who at 89 still had opinions about everyone's life choices. I found my seat at the far end of the table between Cousin Derek, who sold insurance and never stopped talking about it, and Aunt Patricia, who hadn't updated her political views since 1987. Marcus naturally sat at Dad's right hand. The prince beside the king. The comments started before the appetizers arrived. "Morgan!" Mom exclaimed as though surprised I'd shown up. "I didn't know if you'd make it. I know how busy you are with your little computer thing." "I wouldn't miss your birthday, Mom." "Such a long drive from Portland," Aunt Patricia said. "I hope that old car of yours made it okay." I didn't mention that I'd flown in on a private charter that morning. The drive was fine. Dinner progressed through the usual family dynamics. Marcus dominated every conversation, dropping mentions of his major deals and expansion plans for Parker Manufacturing. Dad beamed with pride. Mom cooed over Jennifer's new tennis bracelet. A gift from Marcus, of course. Nobody asked about my work. Nobody asked about my life. I was furniture, present but unimportant. Then came the toast. Marcus stood, champagne glass raised, commanding the room's attention like he'd been born for it. "To Mom," he began, "who taught us that family is everything. And to Dad, who built an empire that I'm honored to carry forward. Parker Manufacturing just had its best quarter in 8 years. And it's because of the foundation you laid." I nearly choked on my water. Best quarter? The company had lost $8.3 million in the past quarter alone. I'd seen the real numbers. "To the Parker legacy," Marcus continued, "and to many more years of success." Glasses clinked. Applause scattered around the table. Marcus caught my eye as he sat down. Something in his expression shifted, predatory, amused. "So Morgan," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "still playing boss with that tiny startup of yours?" The table went quiet, sensing entertainment. "Something like that," I replied. "What is it again?" "Web design. App development." He waved his hand dismissively. "All those tech things sound the same to me. I run a software platform." Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. "A software platform. So cute. How many employees?" 3. 4. Around 400. He didn't hear me. He'd already turned to Jennifer, sharing a private joke. She's so precious, trying so hard. Remember when she made that jewelry website in high school? Same energy. Dad joined in. At least Marcus runs a real company. What is it you do again, Morgan? Websites. Honestly, sweetheart, maybe it's time to think about something more stable. I could probably find you a receptionist position at Parker. Get you some actual business experience. The table laughed. All 17 family members enjoying the joke. I smiled politely. My phone buzzed. What my family didn't know could fill a library. They didn't know that my software platform, Logiflow Pro, the second-generation version of the product I'd helped build a decade ago, was now the industry-leading supply chain optimization system used by 31 Fortune 500 companies. Annual revenue, $186 million. Profit margin, 34%. Market valuation, $1.2 billion. They didn't know that Meridian Ventures, my holding company, had completed 14 successful acquisitions in the past 6 years, turning struggling manufacturing firms into profitable enterprises. Combined portfolio value, $2.1 billion. My personal stake, 73%. They didn't know that I'd been featured in Forbes twice, though I'd requested both times that my photo not be included. The articles referred to me as the anonymous architect of American manufacturing's quiet renaissance. I preferred it that way. They didn't know that the country club they were so proud of, Belmore Country Club, where they'd rejected my membership application 7 years ago, had been acquired by a real estate trust 18 months ago. The majority owner of that trust was a holding company called Northstar Properties. I owned Northstar Properties. They didn't know that I'd spent the last 6 months positioning Meridian Ventures to acquire Parker Manufacturing. We'd purchased $47 million in company debt. We'd secured exclusive supplier contracts that Marcus would need to maintain operations. We'd lined up financing that would make our offer impossible to refuse. The board meeting was Monday at 9 a.m. In approximately 63 hours, I would officially take controlling ownership of my family's company. Not for revenge. Not to humiliate Marcus. To save 412 employees whose jobs were at risk because my brother had spent 5 years running the company into the ground while our parents applauded his every move. I'd seen the layoff plans Marcus had drafted. I'd obtained them through due diligence. One of the advantages of being a potential acquirer. He was planning to cut 180 positions to shore up the balance sheet. 40 years of service meant nothing. Families who'd worked at Parker for 3 generations would lose everything. I couldn't allow that. So I'd positioned myself to do what Marcus couldn't. Save the company he was destroying. The phone call I'd received at dinner was from Richard Chin, the senior acquisition partner at Blackwell & Associates who'd been shepherding the deal. His message confirmed what I already knew. The documents were ready. The financing was in place. Monday morning, I would walk into a boardroom and change my family's understanding of reality. I hadn't planned for the confrontation to happen at Mom's birthday. I'd intended to wait until after the acquisition was complete, then let Marcus discover the truth through official channels. But sometimes life has other plans. Morgan, are you even paying attention? Marcus's voice cut through my thoughts. I looked up to find the entire table staring at me. Sorry, I was thinking about something. Work probably, Marcus said with exaggerated air quotes. Very important work. Tell us, what did you earn last year? 40,000? 50? I'm trying to explain to Dad that not everyone can be successful, and you're such a perfect example. Dad nodded approvingly. It's nothing to be ashamed of, Morgan. Someone has to do the regular jobs. I felt my phone buzz again. And again. 3 messages in rapid succession. Richard Chin, Morgan, we have a situation. The seller's legal team just discovered the identity of the acquirer. They're demanding immediate confirmation. Richard Chin, Marcus Parker is trying to reach you through official channels. He doesn't have your direct line, but he's called our office 4 times. Richard Chin, I need authorization to confirm Meridian Ventures as the acquirer. The board is meeting tonight instead of Monday. Emergency session. Marcus's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. That's weird. The office calling on a Saturday night. He rejected the call. It rang again immediately. Marcus, Jennifer said, maybe you should take that. He stepped away from the table, phone pressed to his ear. Through the glass doors of the Wellington room, I watched his expression transform. Confusion first. Then disbelief. Then something approaching panic. When he returned to the table 4 minutes later, his face had lost all color. Everything okay, son? Dad asked. Marcus didn't answer. He was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, like he was looking at a stranger. Morgan, he said slowly, do you know anyone at Meridian Ventures? Grandmother Parker looked up from her dessert. What's a Meridian Ventures? It's the company that's trying to buy Parker Manufacturing, Marcus said, his voice cracking. They've been acquiring our debt for months. They own our supplier contracts. And according to my CFO, who just called in a complete panic, they know things about our financials that only someone on the inside would know. I took a sip of water. The lawyers traced the ownership structure, Marcus continued, his voice rising. Shell company after shell company. But they finally found the name on the documents. The sole owner of Meridian Ventures. He stared at me. It's you, isn't it? The table fell silent. Before I could respond, 3 things happened simultaneously. The doors to the Wellington room opened and a man in an impeccable charcoal suit walked in. I recognized him immediately. Richard Chin, who was supposed to be in New York, but had apparently flown in when the situation escalated. Marcus's phone rang again. And my grandmother Parker dropped her champagne glass, sending crystal shards skittering across the tablecloth. Miss Parker, Richard said, addressing me with a slight nod. I apologize for the interruption. Given the circumstances, I felt it necessary to brief you in person. The board has moved the meeting to tonight. They're requesting your presence. Excuse me, Dad sputtered. Who are you and why are you interrupting my wife's birthday dinner? Richard handed me a leather portfolio. The final acquisition documents, ma'am. As you requested, we've included provisions to protect all existing employment contracts. The $340 million valuation is confirmed. Signing authority transfers upon your signature. Marcus made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. This is absurd, Dad said, standing from his chair. Morgan, what is this man talking about? My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Veronica Walsh, chairwoman of the Parker Manufacturing Board. I'd never met her in person, but we'd spoken twice over the past 6 months. I answered. Ms. Walsh. Her voice carried through the speaker, loud enough for nearby family members to hear. Miss Parker, I owe you an apology. When your team first approached us about acquisition, I admit I was skeptical. But after reviewing the situation with our debt holders, our suppliers, and our financial advisors, I have to say, you've played this brilliantly. The board has voted unanimously to accept Meridian Ventures' offer. You'll have 73% controlling interest in Parker Manufacturing as of midnight tonight. Aunt Patricia's fork clattered against her plate. The transition team is ready when you are, Veronica continued. And Miss Parker? For what it's worth, I wish we'd known who you were sooner. The things I've learned about your track record, the 14 companies you've acquired and turned around. Logistics Weekly called you the most successful anonymous executive in American manufacturing. That article makes a lot more sense now. Kept my voice level. Thank you, Ms. Walsh. I'll be in touch tomorrow to discuss transition timelines. I ended the call. The silence in the Wellington room was absolute. 17 family members sat frozen, champagne glasses suspended, forks forgotten, desserts untouched. Marcus was the first to speak. This is some kind of joke, right? A prank. Richard Chin cleared his throat. I can assure you, Mr. Parker, this is no prank. Meridian Ventures has been positioning for this acquisition for 11 months. We hold $47 million in Parker Manufacturing debt. We've secured exclusive contracts with 7 of your key suppliers. And as of midnight tonight, your sister will own 73% of the company your great-grandfather built. He paused. She also owns approximately $2.1 billion in other manufacturing and logistics assets, for what it's worth. Mom's face had gone white. $2 billion. $0.1 billion, Richard corrected. The portfolio has grown 12% this quarter alone. That's impossible, Dad said, but his voice had lost all its authority. Morgan works at some startup. He makes websites. She can barely afford Mr. Parker, Richard interrupted, with respect, your daughter's startup was acquired for $780 million 6 years ago. Her share was $12.3 million. She's grown that into a portfolio that includes 14 companies, 4,200 employees, and controlling interests in 3 logistics platforms that handle 8% of North American shipping. Forbes has profiled her twice. The MIT Sloan School of Management teaches a case study about her acquisition strategy. And as of tonight, she's the largest single employer in this county. Cousin Derek knocked over his water glass. Nobody moved to clean it up. Jennifer leaned toward Marcus, her face pale. You're telling me your sister is buying your company? She can't, Marcus said, but his voice shook. I'm the CEO. I have voting rights. The family trust. The family trust owns 31% of voting shares, Richard said. Your sister, through Meridian Ventures and its subsidiaries, now controls 73%. It's not a hostile takeover, Mr. Parker. The board approved it unanimously. Your company was 6 months from bankruptcy. Your sister is the only reason 400 employees will still have jobs on Monday. Marcus turned to me. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Why? He asked. Why would you do this? I set down my water glass. 180 employees, Marcus. That's how many you were planning to lay off next quarter. Families. People who've worked at Parker for decades. I've seen the memos. His face went from white to red. You had no right. I had every right. I'm a debt holder. I'm a potential acquirer. Due diligence includes reviewing corporate communications. I stood, smoothing my dress. The question isn't why I did this. The question is why you ran our great-grandfather's company into the ground while our parents celebrated you as a genius. Dad found his voice. Now wait just a minute, Morgan. Marcus has done everything he can too. Marcus lost $8.3 million last quarter, I said quietly. The quarter before that, $6.1 million. He's over-leveraged by $94 million. He's lost 3 major contracts worth $47 million annually because he couldn't maintain quality standards. And he's been lying to you about all of it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The best quarter in 8 years he toasted tonight? Fiction. The expansion plans he keeps mentioning? Fiction. The company valuation I'm paying? Generous. Meridian's analysts valued Parker Manufacturing at $215 million. I'm paying $340 million because that's what it's worth if someone competent is running it. Marcus sank into his chair. The fight had left him completely. Immediate consequences. My phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Richard Chin glanced at his tablet. Ms. Parker, he said, I'm receiving notifications from the transition team. They're ready to begin implementation protocols. I nodded. Proceed with Phase 1. Within 90 seconds, Marcus's phone buzzed 3 times in rapid succession. Each notification drained more color from his already pale face. My corporate card was just declined, he said flatly. And my parking access to headquarters, revoked. My email. Standard transition protocol, Richard explained. As of midnight, new ownership takes effect. Executive access will be restructured according to the new organizational chart. Jennifer grabbed Marcus's arm. What about the house? The beach house. You said those were company assets. They are, I confirmed. Were. Both properties were purchased with company funds. They'll be liquidated to help pay down the debt Marcus accumulated. You can't do that. Jennifer's composure cracked completely. That house has been in the company for 18 months, I said. Marcus purchased it 18 months ago. During the same quarter, he laid off 47 employees to reduce overhead. The Aspen property was acquired a year before that. Neither was disclosed to the board. Both were funded through a shell account that I'm frankly surprised the auditors missed. Dad stood abruptly. Now you listen here, young lady. Sit down, Gerald. Everyone turned. Grandmother Parker, 91 years old and silent throughout the entire revelation, had risen from her chair. Her voice, though quiet, carried the authority of a woman who'd helped her husband build the original company 6 decades ago. I said sit down. Dad sat. Grandmother Parker turned to me. Her expression was unreadable. I always wondered why the quarterly reports didn't match what I was seeing in the distribution numbers. Harold, your grandfather, taught me to read between the lines. She paused. How bad is it really? I met her eyes. Without intervention, the company would have declared bankruptcy within 6 months. 412 employees would have lost their jobs. The pension fund Marcus raided would have collapsed, affecting 819 retirees. He raided the pension fund? Borrowed against it. $34 million. Without board approval. Marcus made a strangled sound. That's proprietary information. You couldn't possibly. I own the company, Marcus. Everything is my information now. Escalating consequences. By the time dessert plates were cleared, though nobody had eaten anything, the full scope of Marcus's mismanagement had been laid bare. Richard Chin, operating from his tablet, had pulled up document after document. The unauthorized loans. The falsified quarterly reports. The supplier contracts that had been allowed to lapse because Marcus hadn't bothered to read them. The quality control failures that had cost 3 major accounts. The SEC will want to review the quarterly filings, Richard noted. Given the discrepancies between what was reported and what actually occurred, there may be additional regulatory consequences. Marcus's face had gone gray. You're talking about criminal charges. I'm talking about securities fraud, Mr. Parker. The decision to prosecute isn't mine to make. Mom began to cry. Not for the 400 employees who'd almost lost their jobs. Not for the retirees whose pensions had been jeopardized. For Marcus. How could you do this to your brother? She sobbed at me. On my birthday? After everything we've done for you? I let the question hang in the air for a moment. Everything you've done for me, I repeated. You mean skipping my graduation for Marcus's golf tournament? Rejecting my business ideas while funding his failures? Telling me to find a husband instead of playing store? Which part of everything you've done for me should I be most grateful for? Mom's sobs intensified. I felt nothing. I didn't do this to hurt Marcus, I continued. I did this because 400 families depend on Parker Manufacturing for their livelihoods. I did this because my great-grandfather built something worth saving and Marcus was destroying it. I did this because I'm good at saving companies and this company needed saving. Final consequences. At 11:47 p.m., while the family sat in stunned silence around the remnants of Mom's birthday dinner, my phone buzzed with the final notification. The acquisition was complete. I owned Parker Manufacturing. The company my family had built. The company I'd been told I'd never understand. The company that represented everything they'd never believed I could achieve. The transition team has confirmed, Richard said. Meridian Ventures now holds 73% controlling interest in Parker Manufacturing. Congratulations, Ms. Parker. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt tired and ready for the real work to begin. Richard, please have the team schedule meetings with all department heads for Tuesday. I want comprehensive reviews of every division by end of week. And contact the pension fund administrators. I want that $34 million restored by end of month. Of course, ma'am. Marcus looked up. Something had shifted in his expression. Desperation maybe, or the first glimmer of understanding. What about me? He asked quietly. What happens to me? I considered the question. In front of me sat the brother who'd mocked me for 30 years. Who'd taken everything from our parents and given nothing back. Who'd nearly destroyed a company and 400 families through negligence and arrogance. I could destroy him. I had the power now. One word and his career would be over. His reputation gone. His future erased. But that wasn't why I'd done any of this. The board will determine your role going forward, I said. But I'll tell you what I've told them. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in saving this company. If you're willing to work, actually work, not play CEO while the building burns, there might be a place for you. Operations maybe. Something where you can learn the business from the ground up the way I did. Marcus stared at me. You'd let me stay? I'd let you prove yourself. That's different. The party, such as it was, ended shortly after midnight. Family members scattered like startled birds, cousins making hurried excuses, aunts and uncles suddenly remembering early morning commitments. Nobody knew what to say. The world they'd understood for 30 years had inverted in a single evening. I walked Grandmother Parker to her car. At 89 she still drove herself, a fact that horrified Mom and impressed me. "You knew," I said, "about the financial problems." She nodded slowly. "I suspected. Didn't have proof until tonight." She paused at her car door, studying my face. "You're different from them, Morgan. Always were. I should have said something sooner." "It's okay, Grandma." "No," she said firmly. "It's not. I watched them dismiss you for 30 years and I never spoke up. That's on me." She reached out and squeezed my hand, her grip still surprisingly strong. "Your great-grandfather would be proud. Not because of the money. Because you did the right thing when it would have been easier to do nothing." I watched her drive away, then turned to find my father standing behind me. We stood in the country club parking lot, surrounded by luxury cars and the fading echoes of a birthday party gone sideways. Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him, diminished somehow, like someone had let the air out of him. "I don't understand," he said finally. When did you? Does it matter? I just." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "All those years. We thought you were struggling. We thought you needed help." "I did need help, Dad. Just not the kind you were willing to give." Kept my voice even. "I needed someone to believe I could do something. To invest in me the way you invested in Marcus. To show up at my graduation. To take my ideas seriously. That's the help I needed." His face crumpled. "We didn't know. You didn't ask." The silence stretched between us. 23 years of dismissal, of comparison, of being invisible in my own family. It all lived in that silence. "Can we?" Dad started. "Can we start over? I know we made mistakes. Your mother and I, we just wanted what was best." "You wanted what was best for Marcus," I corrected gently. "I was an afterthought. And honestly, Dad, I've made peace with that. I built my life without your support and I'm proud of what I've built." "So that's it? You're just done with us?" I thought about the question. The easy answer was yes. Walk away. Never look back. Let them experience what I'd felt for 30 years. The silence, the absence, the not matching. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. "I'm not done," I said. "But I'm also not going to pretend the past didn't happen. You don't get to ignore me for 3 decades and then expect everything to be fine because you finally noticed I exist. Then what do you want?" "I want respect. Not because I'm rich. I was the same person before you knew about the money. I want respect because I'm your daughter and I deserve it. I always did." Dad nodded slowly, tears forming in his eyes. "You're right. You're absolutely right. And I want you to understand something," I continued. "I didn't do this for revenge. I didn't do it to hurt Marcus or embarrass the family. I did it because 400 people were about to lose their jobs, and I had the ability to stop it. That's the kind of person I am. That's who I've always been if you'd bothered to look." A black sedan pulled into the parking lot. My car service, arranged by Richard before he'd flown back to New York. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door. "I have meetings tomorrow," I said. "Transition planning. Employee communications. A lot of people are scared right now and it's my job to reassure them." Dad watched me walk toward the car. "Morgan." I turned. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know that doesn't fix anything. But I am. I'm sorry." I nodded once. "It's a start." I slid into the back seat. As the car pulled away, I allowed myself one glance in the rearview mirror. My father stood alone in the parking lot watching me leave. For the first time in my life he was paying attention. The next morning I arrived at Parker Manufacturing headquarters at 7 a.m. The building was quiet. Weekend security, a few early arrivals who hadn't heard the news yet. I walked through the lobby where my grandfather's portrait hung, past the conference rooms where decisions had been made without me for decades, to the executive office that would soon be mine. On the desk sat a single photograph, Marcus shaking hands with Dad, both of them grinning, a banner reading Parker Manufacturing, 75 years of excellence visible behind them. I picked up the photo and studied it. 2 men who'd been given everything, celebrating achievements they'd inherited rather than earned. I set it aside. There was work to do. 3 months later, Parker Manufacturing reported its first profitable quarter in 2 years. The pension fund had been fully restored. Not a single employee had been laid off. Marcus, true to his word, had taken a position in operations, junior level, learning the business from the ground up. He was miserable. He was also, for the first time in his life, actually working. At Thanksgiving, I received an invitation to Mom's annual dinner. I declined. Some bridges need time to rebuild, and I wasn't ready to pretend everything was fine. Instead, I spent the holiday with my team, the 412 employees of Parker Manufacturing plus their families. We held a company picnic at the newly renovated factory grounds. Someone gave a toast to the boss who saved our jobs. I smiled, said thank you, and got back to work. That's who I've always been. If you bothered to look,